Country music isn't just about guitars on porches and emotional songs. Behind the scenes, there's a long history filled with fights, scandals, and big tempers. Some of the same strong personalities that created amazing music also caused big problems. Whether they drank too much, treated others poorly, or couldn't keep their egos in check, these artists didn't always behave. Here are 21 of the worst jerks in old country music history. Number 21, Billy Joe Shaver. Billy Joe Shaver is praised as a songwriting outlaw, the kind whose lyrics helped shape Waylon Jennings' best records. Fans admired his honesty in songs like Honky Tonk Heroes and Old Five and Dimers Like Me. To many, he was a true blue poet of the working man's struggles. But Shaver's rough-edged personality wasn't just an image. He once shot a man in the face outside a bar, claiming it was self-defense. In court, he told the jury, "I meant to shoot him in the mouth, and the bullet just went through his cheek," a statement that stunned even diehard fans. His offstage behavior often mirrored the violence and unpredictability in his lyrics. Those close to him described a man who pushed people away, with mood swings, impulsiveness, and a volatile temper that escalated beyond reason. He beat the charges, but the incident left a lasting scar on his reputation. And while Billy Joe always said he was misunderstood, the next name on this list made no such excuses. Johnny Paycheck soared to fame with blue-collar anthems like "Take This Job and Shove It." His gritty voice and rebellious attitude made him a hero for those fed up with authority. He was one of the original outlaws in country music, but offstage, he lived out every bad boy cliché. He was arrested multiple times, sued over broken contracts, and once even shot a man in the head during an argument in a bar. That man survived, but Paycheck's career never fully recovered. He struggled with addiction, was known to show up late or intoxicated to gigs, and burned bridges with both fans and industry insiders. His reputation became so toxic that promoters hesitated to book him, fearing chaos followed wherever he went. Time in prison slowed him down, but it never fully repaired his damaged legacy. Still, his antics seemed tame compared to the high-speed destruction that came with the next man. David Allan Coe built his fame on being offensive and outrageous, with songs like "You Never Even Called Me by My Name." His storytelling drew in fans who wanted the real raw truth, no matter how messy. But Coe crossed the line far too often. His underground albums featured racist and misogynistic lyrics that made even his defenders uncomfortable. He also picked fights with journalists and bragged about prison stints that later turned out to be exaggerated or false. Behind the scenes, Coe's arrogance and erratic behavior alienated fellow artists, with many refusing to tour or collaborate with him. His insistence on being the realest outlaw often came off less authentic and more toxic. The combination of bigotry, lies, and arrogance pushed Coe into the margins of country music. But unlike Coe, the next artist never had to seek out trouble. It always found him. Merle Kilgore co-wrote Ring of Fire and managed Hank Williams Jr., playing key roles in country history. Fans knew him as the affable, funny guy who helped steer legends to greatness. But Kilgore's reputation among insiders wasn't always so charming. Many described him as controlling, arrogant, and self-serving behind the scenes. He often took more credit than he earned, leaving collaborators feeling used. Some accused him of manipulating business decisions to benefit himself at the expense of the artists he managed. His ability to smile on camera while pulling strings in the background earned him both admiration and quiet resentment from industry peers. His talent for showbiz couldn't hide the bitterness he sometimes left in his wake. And if Kilgore manipulated from the shadows, the next guy was throwing punches out in the open. Faron Young was a honky-tonk staple with hits like Hello Walls and Live Fast, Love Hard, Die Young. His smooth voice and good looks made him a fan favorite in the 1950s and 60s. But Young's behavior was often anything but smooth. He had a reputation for being aggressive, especially toward women. He once groped a reporter during a live interview and was known to get violent when drunk. Bandmates and colleagues recalled mood swings, foul language, and open hostility toward those who challenged him. Over time, his personal demons eclipsed his professional success, isolating him from the very community that once adored him. His decline into alcoholism and depression only worsened his reputation. And as Faron's bitterness grew, another rising star in the outlaw era started pushing people away in his own way. Waylon Jennings was the outlaw king, with legendary albums like Honky Tonk Heroes and Dreaming My Dreams. Fans loved his deep voice, rebellious lyrics, and hard-driving style. But Waylon's temper was just as famous. He could be mean to bandmates, dismissive to fans, and once fired his entire crew on a whim. His drug use only made his mood swings worse, turning him into a walking storm. Road crews feared his outbursts, and other musicians often found themselves on the wrong end of his scorn. He demanded loyalty but rarely gave it in return, leaving a wake of damaged relationships behind him. Jennings mellowed out later in life, but those who worked with him never forgot the rage. The same can't be said for the next artist, who never bothered to mellow at all. Tanya Tucker became a sensation at just 13 with Delta Dawn, growing into a fierce voice for women in country. Her sultry style and powerhouse vocals kept fans captivated for decades, but fame at a young age came with a price. Tanya was known for diva behavior, volatile romances, and public meltdowns. Her wild partying and rumored backstage tantrums turned her into a tabloid fixture. She clashed with producers, ghosted on tours, and developed a reputation for being impossible to work with at her peak. Those closest to her said her inner circle was a revolving door of enablers, yes men, and burned-out friends. Though she's since reclaimed her place in the spotlight, those early years left many wondering what could have been. And while Tanya demanded attention, the next name took being a jerk to deeply personal extremes. Porter Wagoner brought rhinestone suits and heartfelt duets to living rooms across America. His long-running show introduced Dolly Parton to the world, making him a household name. But behind their sparkly smiles was a toxic relationship. Porter tried to control Dolly's career, sued her when she left, and refused to let go. He even took credit for her success long after they'd split professionally. He allegedly blocked her from industry opportunities and used guilt to manipulate her return. The lawsuits and his public bitterness cast a shadow over his legacy, revealing a man who couldn't stand being left behind. Porter's bitterness became legend, turning a mentor story into a cautionary tale. And while he clung to control, the next jerk burned it all down in spectacular fashion. Though better known for rock and roll, Jerry Lee Lewis made a lasting mark on country with hits like What Made Milwaukee Famous. His raw talent and fire at the piano style captivated crowds, but Lewis's private life was a disaster zone. He married his 13-year-old cousin, got blacklisted, and had multiple violent outbursts. His arrogance and cruelty drove away family, friends, and fans. Tales of domestic abuse, reckless behavior, and a string of ruined relationships followed him everywhere. Lewis rarely showed remorse, instead doubling down on his self-made outlaw image. He played country with passion, but lived with chaos. Still, for all of Jerry Lee's scandal, the next name perfected the art of public feuds. Travis Tritt rose to fame in the 90s, with hits like Here's a Quarter and It's a Great Day to Be Alive. His mix of southern rock and country swagger drew in a loyal crowd, but Tritt's pride often turned into combativeness. He feuded with fellow artists, insulted newer acts, and once kicked out a fan for using a wheelchair-accessible seat too early. His online tirades only added fuel to the fire. He gained a reputation for being difficult to work with, demanding, and unapologetically abrasive. Even fans began to sense the chip on his shoulder wasn't just an act. Tritt never shied from being combative, but the next artist's betrayal wasn't just rude, it was historic. Buck Owens helped invent the Bakersfield sound and brought humor to millions through Hee Haw. His sharp guitar playing and voice made him a country institution, but off camera, Owens was often cold, calculating, and mean. He underpaid his band, including the great Don Rich, and used people to climb higher. Even close friends said Buck cared more about money than music. Former colleagues accused him of emotional manipulation and egotism, claiming he pushed others aside to protect his spotlight. His cold treatment of those who helped him rise tarnished his golden boy image. Owens's charm on stage was real, but his backstage cruelty ran deep. And if Buck used people, the next man simply threw them away. Glenn Campbell was a crossover sensation with classics like Rhinestone Cowboy and Wichita Lineman. He had a golden voice, charming smile, and a string of hits that placed him among country music's elite. But fame brought out a darker side. Glenn struggled with alcohol and cocaine for years, leading to erratic behavior on and off stage. He had high-profile relationships that ended in disaster, including one with Tanya Tucker that was plagued with public fights and drug use. Bandmates described him as arrogant and cruel during his worst moments, berating them in front of crowds or canceling shows last minute without notice. He often blamed others for his mistakes, showing little regard for those affected by his spiraling choices. Glenn eventually sought redemption, but not before alienating many who once admired him. And while Campbell's troubles were tied to addiction, the next man's cruelty seemed to come naturally. Steve Earle is praised for his songwriting brilliance, with songs like Guitar Town and Copperhead Road becoming modern classics. His gritty realism and rebel stance won him devoted fans who saw him as a true voice of the people. But Earle's personal life was messy and often self-destructive. He battled heroin addiction, went to jail, and burned through 7 marriages. Many of his partners and friends described him as emotionally abusive, dismissive, and manipulative. His attitude toward collaborators was often condescending, with reports of him taking credit for work that wasn't fully his. Behind his righteous exterior was a man many found difficult and domineering. He cleaned up and continued making music, but not everyone he left behind was willing to forgive. And if Steve Earle alienated through arrogance, the next man pushed people away with sheer violence. Johnny Horton thrilled fans with story songs like The Battle of New Orleans and North to Alaska. He had charisma, a unique vocal style, and a way of turning history into hits. But his offstage demeanor shocked many who worked with him. Horton was known to be paranoid and deeply aggressive, reportedly carrying guns and picking fights at bars. Colleagues described him as insecure and quick-tempered, constantly convinced people were trying to take advantage of him. His unpredictable behavior created tension on tours and recording sessions, where bandmates said they walked on eggshells. Horton's promising career ended suddenly with his tragic death, but many who knew him remembered a man as difficult as he was talented. And where Horton's fire burned quick, the next artist's bitterness simmered for years. Hank Snow helped shape country music in its early days with hits like I'm Moving On and I've Been Everywhere. He was revered for his smooth delivery and tireless dedication to the genre. But behind his pristine image was a much darker story. Snow was accused of being cold and emotionally distant, even to his own family. His son alleged abuse, claiming that Hank's public charm masked a controlling and terrifying presence at home. Fellow musicians found him stiff, judgmental, and reluctant to share credit with anyone but himself. His legacy remains, but the pain he left behind complicates it. And as Snow clung to old-school authority, the next jerk was busy smashing everything around him in fits of rage. Roger Miller brought humor and heart to country music with songs like King of the Road and Dang Me. He was beloved for his clever lyrics and offbeat personality, but not everyone found him so charming. Miller could be cruel when the cameras weren't rolling, cutting people down with biting sarcasm, treating staff like servants, and throwing tantrums over minor issues. His perfectionism quickly turned toxic, creating a tense environment during recordings and shows. Former associates recalled his mood swings and unpredictable nature, which made collaboration nearly impossible at times. His genius came at a cost, one paid by those in his orbit. And if Roger's cruelty was dressed in humor, the next man's was cloaked in outright menace. Hank Williams Jr. carved out his own legacy with hits like Family Tradition and A Country Boy Can Survive. He embraced the outlaw image, blending Southern rock and country with a swagger fans loved. But Hank Jr.'s attitude often veered into arrogance and aggression. He lashed out at critics, feuded with fellow artists, and made headlines for inflammatory political statements. His concerts were often chaotic, with outbursts on stage and open hostility toward reporters and promoters. Insiders described him as demanding and dismissive, especially when he didn't get his way. His larger-than-life persona masked a combative personality that exhausted everyone around him. He may have wanted to live outside the rules, but the destruction he left behind showed how hard it was to work within them. And where Hank Jr. embraced chaos, the next name became infamous for outright betrayal. Jerry Reed lit up stages with his guitar skills and fun-loving hits like Eastbound and Down and When You're Hot, You're Hot. He was a fan favorite known for his charm and humor, but those close to him saw a different side. Reed could be dismissive of collaborators and overly competitive, often insisting on the spotlight. He was accused of undercutting fellow musicians to keep himself front and center, sometimes refusing to share credit for co-written material. Crew members claimed he was hot-tempered behind the scenes, creating tension that clashed with his cheerful public image. Reed's musical brilliance stayed intact, but the relationships he strained left lasting bruises. And if Jerry smiled while pushing others aside, The next artist cut deep and laughed about it. Loretta Lynn broke barriers with songs like Coal Miner's Daughter and The Pill, becoming a symbol of strength for women in country music. Her bold lyrics and fearless attitude inspired generations, but she also had a reputation for being fiercely combative behind closed doors. Lynn clashed with producers, publicly criticized fellow artists, and often took credit for changing the industry without acknowledging those who helped. She reportedly had frosty relationships with other women in the industry, undermining those she saw as competition. Staff described her as unyielding and difficult, with mood swings that could turn admiration into resentment in a heartbeat. Her place in history is secure, but her personality often left people divided. And if Loretta fought her way to the top, the next figure stomped over anyone in his path. Marty Robbins gave country music drama and romance with classics like El Paso and Don't Worry. He had a golden voice, a cinematic flair, and a loyal fan base. But Robbins was known for having an explosive temper. He would frequently berate his band members, cancel appearances without warning, and storm out of interviews when questions didn't go his way. His obsession with control led him to micromanage every aspect of his career, alienating those who tried to help. Some artists feared working with him due to his reputation for unpredictable rages and emotional coldness. Marty was a legend on record, but offstage, he often left people bruised and burned. And if Robbins ruled with rage, the number one jerk reigned with cruelty, scandal, and destruction. Hank Williams Sr. defined country music with timeless songs like Your Cheatin' Heart and I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry. His voice embodied heartbreak, and his writing reshaped the genre forever. But Hank's demons were as legendary as his songs. He was abusive to his wife Audrey, unreliable in business, and spiraled into alcohol and morphine addiction that cost him friendships, gigs, and respect. His reckless behavior destroyed his health and reputation. Many who tried to help him were pushed away or mistreated, and his short life was marked by broken relationships and bitter regrets. Hank died at just 29, a tragic figure wrapped in myth and misery. His music endures, but the chaos he unleashed makes him the most haunting example of genius turned toxic. Country music has always promised honesty in its songs, but these jerks prove that behind the charm and steel guitars, some of its biggest stars were anything but kind. From violent outbursts to ruthless egos, these were more than just bad moments. They were career-defining flaws. Which one surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments.